Hello neighbor, I'm Robert Burns, and we are all set to begin segment 3 of me sounding off regarding Louisiana Attorney General James D. Buddy Caldwell. I would imagine that those of you who have looked at segments 1 and 2 would have to admit this is a really interesting sound off feature. I will tell those of you who decided to just come straight into the third one, it really will be advantageous to you to go back and look at segments 1 and 2. However, I'm going to make it easy for you. I'm going to very quickly bring you up to speed with where we are. Okay, bottom line, Louisiana bid out its Medicaid servicing contract. A company called CNSI won the bidding. CNSI was doing a fantastic job by all accounts. They were getting glowing recommendations from the state of Louisiana. In fact, a glowing recommendation was sent to Arkansas in February of 2013. But behind the scenes, there was a Judas employee in the name of Steve Smith, although he was using an alias, John Canigo. They had no idea this was going on. He was a disgruntled employee because they overrated him in the recruiting process, so he had a $50,000 reduction in his salary. He also didn't like the fact he wasn't reporting directly to President Ahmed. And so, basically, Norm Nichols. Now, we got several key players. Steve Smith is the disgruntled employee, a.k.a. John Canigo. All right? Norm Nichols, the president of Molina. That's the company that for 30 years has held the Louisiana contract. However, they were told during the bidding process, hey, you don't have the technical expertise. We're not even going to let you bid. Talk about a smackdown, okay? Nichols hauls off and calls Steve Smith. All right, so let's have dinner. They have dinner. Nichols hauls off and fires off an email. That was the Canigo email. It was brought to you in a previous feature. Made all kinds of outlandish allegations with regard to CNSI. Never once did it say there's any criminal activity, but what he repeatedly says is, I believe if an investigation is conducted, thus and so is going to happen. I believe you should terminate this contract. The whole thing should be rebid. I believe. What about I can prove? Because here's it. You don't fire this kind of thing. This was an utter act of stupidity. All right? On Steve Smith's part. An utter act of stupidity. All right, but he did it. Okay? Sends it to Medicaid Services. Medicaid Services forwards on to the AG's office. AG's office, they go over to Bobby Jindal. Whoa. Now, things get hot and heavy over here, Governor Jindal. All right? They convinced Jindal and his administration to cancel the contract. All right. Buddy Caldwell has single-handedly, unilaterally gotten that Medicaid contract canceled. He has taken all of the poker chips, and I might add, they're our poker chips. He ain't putting up the money. It's our money, okay? He's taken all of the chips, and he's put them all on the table. You know, he says, by God, I know there's got to be wrongdoing here. We're not even going to give them the 30 days. We're not even going to tell them. All right, they found out they were being canceled by way of a press release. Okay, so Caldwell's put all the chips on the table. All right, and he cancels the contract. Well, understandably, CNSI is not only shocked, dismayed, wondering what in the hell is going on. Literally 30 days after we get a glowing recommendation that Louisiana provides to Arkansas, whom we're trying to get the contract of, and 30 days later we're terminated and we don't know why? We're not in the blue basis. All it does is, I showed you the letter for cause. That's all it says. All right. Now, when I concluded session 2 or segment 2, I referenced the Attorney General's office saying that, okay, by the way, the Attorney General's office convened a grand jury to begin looking into this in May of 2013, okay? Just so happened that CNSI filed a civil lawsuit. Contracts terminated March 23rd, 2013. CNSI files a lawsuit May the 6th, I believe, of 2013. And lo and behold, Buddy Caldwell says we're going to convene a grand jury to look into all this. Okay, well, I wonder if you'd have done that if it hadn't been a civil lawsuit filed. Okay, now you backed into a corner, okay? You put all the chips on the table, our chips, so you better produce, because otherwise, state of Louisiana, me, I'm writing income tax checks, everybody else, and you've decided you're going to cancel this contract, and if CNI sign, if you didn't have great grounds for it, going to cost all of us, okay? All right, now, so Buddy Caldwell impanels this grand jury, and so he wants, everything's going, and when I say Buddy Caldwell, his son is running this whole deal, okay, David Caldwell, perhaps to make a name off of himself with Bruce Greenstein. We'll get to that in a subsequent segment. The plan today is to wrap up the CNSI, transition to Bruce Greenstein tomorrow. That's going to be an interesting segment as well. But all right, when I wrapped up yesterday, I emphasized I want all this under seal, and I said that Louis Oglesby was very displeased that the Attorney General's office would make the statement that we would believe that you would engage in witness tampering. And I hope you'll indulge me a moment, because in my opinion, I did a very poor job. I guess I thought, hey, this is taking too long. And so I read off what Louis Oglesby said in court rather hurriedly, and I want to do that again because I just don't think it was a very good performance on my part. So this is July 30th. The lawsuit's now, what, I don't know, 60 days old, well, a little more than 65, 70 days old. And Buddy Caldwell's office, David Caldwell, is saying that any type of evidence, we got to have it filed under seal because we're conducting a criminal investigation, and we believe that Mr. Louis Oglesby and Mr. Michael McKay may very well engage in witness tampering. Okay, this is Louis Oglesby's response, or his reaction to that, and I hope I do a better job this time. First of all, he's complaining that, hey, this grand jury that he's got over there, they're not taking any legitimate evidence. And he says, the truth is we should have had that a long time ago. That's been a public record. They filed an appeal. They did not even ask for an expedited hearing. I had to do that. They are not doing anything to stand up here and demean good people with things like witness tampering. That's not a lawyer I'm familiar with, and that's not an attorney general's office or a state government that I would be proud to defend or to sit with. I don't mean that because I'm loud. I mean it because I'm angry. I am angry. You do not insult people in the courtroom, that would be Oglesby and McKay, without the proof, and then you give them a chance to say they're wrong, all right? There is not any witness tampering going on here. That is just dishonest. And the state of Louisiana, not some private practitioner, to come in here and say that is more than offensive. It is wrong. Secondly, who is the Attorney General representing? Remember, AG's office, first thing they did was call Norm Nichols, president of Molina. Bizarre little action, but that's what they did. He starts off with his arguments about two competitors, one of whom, Molina, is cheating the state out of thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars every year, every month, because they won't do it in an efficient and effective way. When did they, meaning the Attorney General's office, when did they, start providing for private entities? Let Molina come in here and defend itself. I am here to tell you, I think Molina is beyond all of this, says beyond, should be behind all of this. I think the state is the handmaiden in all of this. I think CNI has been taken advantage of in a most secretive point possible. The very idea that they would find out that they have been fired by way of a press release that says because of wrongdoing, without ever being asked by anyone from the state of Louisiana, hey fellas, this is what we heard. Do you have an explanation for it? To this day, that is conduct, Your Honor, that I am unfamiliar with. In law or just in regular life, I am completely unfamiliar with that. And I concluded the last session by saying the old saying about the pot calling the kettle black. And that's what we're going to cover today. You probably saw the headline on the email that said Attorney General's office engages in outrageous witness tampering. Well, let's go ahead and discuss that. All right. I told you about the grand jury being convened in May of 2013. I also told you back in the first segment, I said it was important to recognize that there was a brief federal investigation because James D. Buddy Caldwell in his office has, boy, it's out there. Oh, boy, there's a federal investigation going on. And a lot of folk don't particularly care for Bobby Jindal, so they're figuring, ha, we got him now. Oh, boy, this is going to be something to behold here. The feds... Pardon me there. The feds are into all this. Okay, well, the feds abandoned it really quickly, all right? And I do mean really, really quickly, okay? But nevertheless, there's this perception out there. The media, they're saying this is a federal investigation. Well, Mr. Ahmed, during testimony before the Arkansas legislature, and we're going to give you the link for his testimony. I don't want there to be anything that, okay, you must be shooting from the hip. We're going to give you the link for Mr. Ahmed's testimony. He made this testimony on September the 23rd of 2013. And you have to forgive me, I must have put that in a different spot. There we go. I'm sorry. I apologize. And one of them went on the floor. There are so many documents in this, and I'm trying to sort them all out and only give you links to some critical ones, because you would not believe the barrage that you have to sort through to get this. All right, so we're talking about September the 23rd of 2013. This is the date Mr. Ahmed has given this testimony before the Arkansas legislature, okay? Now, bear in mind, Louisiana only canceled the contract March of 2013, so we're talking about 6 months, okay? The CNSI files the lawsuit in early May of 2013, and yet this is testimony. We're giving you the link for it. That Mr. Ahmed is making before the Arkansas legislature, September the 23rd of 2013. CNSI incurred costs, talking about bidding on the and by the way, Arkansas says, we got to disqualify you. We did a reference check down in Louisiana. We had some problems going on down there. Okay, CNSI incurred costs of over $1 million to assemble the requested Arkansas information. We believe that our company can provide the cutting-edge technology that will result in better care, better health, and lower cost. We have done so elsewhere, and we are already seeing a direct impact on the health of people, their lives, and improving as a result of the technology that we are implementing. It came as a shock that we would be disqualified based on a Louisiana reference check. We did not understand how the determination was made, since we were given a glowing recommendation by the Louisiana Department of Health and Hospitals only 30 days prior to them terminating the contract. In fact, we had 5 such positive letters that were accompanied in our proposal. And I've got all the text highlighting, and I'm going to read this entire thing, but we have never been disqualified during any procurement process in the 19-year history of CNSI. Now, I'd like to clarify several facts in relation to the Louisiana situation that's circulating in the media and relevant to this process. First of all, there is no active federal investigation. I paused before and after that because I want to emphasize that. This is September 23rd, 2013. This is underlined. It's in both. It's not my doing. This is off the. There is no active federal investigation. The only federal investigation we are aware of was focused on the Louisiana procurement, not CNSI. The only activity in that investigation was the issuance of a subpoena directed at the state of Louisiana, seeking proposals and financials of all the bidders, not just CNSI, all, which included HP, ACX Xerox, Molina, as well as CNSI. Again, despite allegations to the contrary, the fact is that there is no active federal investigation. And down here, Buddy Caldwell and folk, they're whooping it up. Feds, 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 this is what's going on, all right? There is no active federal investigation. The federal investigation was not pursued. No other subpoenas were ever issued. No further action was ever taken. And no one at CNSI was ever even contacted. Okay? All right, now Buddy Caldwell did not want that being revealed, which is probably exactly why Mr. Ahmed revealed it. And Marcia Schuler, being an astute journalist that she is and reporter for The Advocate, she said, okay, I'm going to get to the bottom of this. I've got the president of Molina, Mr. Ahmed, making a public statement in which he was sworn to tell the truth. And he says on September 23rd of 2013, there is no active federal investigation. All right. Ms. Schuler is an excellent journalist, so she went to David Caldwell, and she did so on November the 9th of 2013 when there happened to be a court hearing. And I have attended every court hearing of this matter. Unfortunately, I missed that one, okay? Nevertheless, Ms. Schuler did, and I praised her in her coverage. It's now since been wiped off of the Advocate, unfortunately, but my Facebook comments are, thank God she did go and provided such a great article. And she asked Mr. Caldwell, she said, okay, Mr. Caldwell, what about Mr. Ahmed's statement that there is no federal investigation? And David Caldwell fairly flippantly said, that's news to us. The feds don't tell us anything. All right? And he knew darn well there was no federal investigation, okay? Well, now Judge Kelly's starting to get a little suspicious here, all right? And so I did attend this court hearing. It was about third week of January 2014, okay, 2014. And Judge Caldwell finally, he looked Caldwell straight in the eyes and he said, I want to know right now, is there or is there not a federal investigation? And that's when David Caldwell kind of slumped his shoulders and he said, Your Honor, the federal investigation is closed, but our investigation continues. And it won't be the first time that the feds walked away, but we proceeded on to obtain an indictment. Okay, so now any warm and fuzzy feeling that we the citizens might have had because the feds were involved, we now know we're relying on the state and Attorney General Buddy Caldwell. Well, boy, that sent shivers down my spine because I'm going to tell you, I had dealings with Buddy Caldwell. That'll be the 5th segment of me sounding off. So I knew we had problems, okay? I could predict it. I knew it just as soon as I heard him say it. All right. So we're now talking about January of 2014, and there's been the revelation that there is no Fed investigation. And I want to emphasize just how prevalent the belief was that there was, okay? I have a very good friend. I had lunch with him in October of 2014. And he said, he just started talking about, I wonder how everything's going with the feds on that. I said, there is no federal investigation. We're October of 2014, over a year. And I'm not talking about just some casual friend. I am talking about a news junkie, okay? I would give his name, but I don't want to embarrass him because he's known pretty well. And I don't want to embarrass him. And it could happen to anybody. But I said, there is no federal investigation. And he said, you know that? And I said, hell yeah, I know it. You want to know how? I was in the courtroom when David Caldwell in early January of 2014 had to admit to Judge Kelly that there was no federal investigation. All right? Okay. April the 9th of 2014. April 9th, 2014. Through matters related to the criminal trial, Louis Oglesby and Michael McKay find out who Canigo is. It was a little bit of a fluke, I guess you could say, but they find out that it is Steve Smith, the disgruntled employee that I mentioned to you earlier, who had his salary reduced $50,000. Now, he got a $50,000 success bonus on the way out the door. I mean, this guy was a real piece of work. He's out there promoting CNSI. Oh, it's the greatest company. He goes to Colorado. Whoo, we got a great company. You ought to sign up with us. He goes to Mississippi. You ought to sign up with us. And all the while, he's talking with Norm Nichols, you know, who Nichols is upset because they're about to be out the door. There's a transition period, but come the end of 2013, those old boys are out of here, okay? Molina and the whole crew, they're out of here. CNSI is going through the transition and doing quite well on it, getting the glowing recommendation. All right. Okay, now you probably can surmise that Louis Oglesby, the one that made this, these remarks about David Caldwell and the witness tampering, when they learn on April 9th, 2014, that Steve Smith is Canigo, okay? They say, all right, bottom line, y'all been talking about seal, all this is going to be sealed and all of this, and so it's time to do some unsealing. We got a right to go out and take Steve Smith's deposition. Oh, okay, David Caldwell has to admit, all right, so we're going to unseal the infamous Canigo report. And I'm going to give you the link to the Canigo report that stayed under seal, CNSI, for, let's see, 2012, 2013, and 4 months of 2014. They don't have a clue that all this time, 2.5 years, they've got this disgruntled employee was an on payroll attorney for 3 months, working behind the scenes, and then of course for 2.5, well, close to 2.5 years thereafter, still working with the AG's office, a disgruntled employee. They now know that they didn't know he was disgruntled until April 9th of 2014. Now, okay, so we now know it's Steve Smith. We want to go take his deposition, all right? And so the AG's office says, things are starting to go south for the AG's office, all right? So they go ahead and release the Canigo report. And I'm going to give you a link for that Canigo report, all right? So Louis Oglesby, by the way, Steve Smith, a.k.a. John Canigo, has now moved to Orlando, Florida. And so Steve Smith and Mr. Oglesby and David Caldwell, probably some other attorneys, they all convene in Orlando, Florida on May the 1st, 2014. Like I said, they learned of his identity on April the 9th of 2014. So what are we talking about? 21 days? 21 days later, they got him scheduled for a deposition. Now, that is fast, okay? Like I said, Louis Oglesby wasn't going to fumble around with this, or fool around with this. And so he supplies the Canigo report to Mr. Smith, and Smith is shocked at its contents. He said, I didn't say that. There was a lot of things he says he didn't say in there. He said, that's not accurate. Whew. He didn't say it. I wonder how in the blue blazes it got in there. Because if you didn't say it, and you're telling the truth that you didn't say it, well, that would be evidence tampering. Okay? One of the most sensational items in there, by the way, Louis Oglesby said, since there's so much that you say you didn't say, let's try to help the process along. I'm going to hand you an ink pen, okay? And I want you to underline what you are willing to claim responsibility for, okay? Don't underline things that you say you didn't say. If you'll look at the Canigo report, it has the underlining. We're giving you the version after Steve Smith is underlined. You'll notice about, I'd say 40% of it is not underlined. And on page 5, there's one key paragraph that's not underlined. It says, Alan Levine wrote the business plan for DHH and the MMIS contract. Levine would have canceled the CNSI Louisiana MMIS proposal outright based on the pricing irregularities alone. Bobby Jindal has what Canigo, that's Steve Smith, Bobby Jindal has what Canigo calls an India-to-India ancestor-driven background and network of contractors that brought CNSI and Jindal together. CNSI's Louisiana business model looked a lot like the Louisiana DHH model. Mr. Ahmed met with Jindal often. Jindal's public persona does not jive with what is going on at DHH. That's a mouthful, okay? And it sure does look like there is a concerted, and you got to remember, all this is going on back in 2011. I realize that now everybody knows Bobby Jindal doesn't have a snowball's chance in Hades of becoming president of the United States. But back then, the guy had just gotten 70% of the vote. There was all this talk about, he could very well be the VP to serve in the 2012. You got to realize we're talking about material that was created a long time ago. This report that I just read from you was created in May of 2012, okay? Right in the heat of the president. I mean, Jindal may have been, according to some sources, Jindal may be vetted, all right? So what I'm saying is there is an incentive to slam Bobby Jindal. And those of you who know me and know me well know I don't have any use for Bobby Jindal, but man's perfectly capable of self-imploding. He doesn't need manufactured material to cause that to happen. And that certainly appears to be what's going on here. All right. So, that part of the report is underlined. Canigo says, hey, when I had dinner with Norm Nichols, I left there afraid. Okay. He also testified that, okay, I had dinner with Norm Nichols, and after that I decided I better send off this Medicaid email. Now that's his testimony on May the 1st. Okay. He says, I figured I better send off this email, you know, because I met with Norm Nichols, and there was a lot of concern. I left there afraid. I don't know afraid of what. He just said he was afraid. Okay. And he said, I felt like I better send off this email, the infamous Canigo email that was all full of, I believe this, I believe that, you need to cancel this, they're flat broke, they're in B of A's Special Assets Division, B of A won't loan them another dime. Doing that for the benefit of those of you who did not watch the earlier editions, okay? That Canigo email is really something to behold. And so he says, I fired the email off after I met with Norm Nichols. Okay. The deposition lasted for quite a while. And so what they did is we're going to continue it. This was May the 1st of 2014. So they said we're going to continue the deposition. All right. So they reconvene in Orlando on July the 8th of 2014. So that was what, about a two-month, 67-day recess period between the two periods for conducting this deposition. As a routine matter, Louis Oglesby began the July 8th. And by the way, the Attorney General's office didn't even show up at the July 8th deposition, all right? Didn't even show up, all right? But Louis Oglesby, as a matter of routine practice at the July 8th deposition, he says, any chance you've had any contact with the Attorney General's office? And Mr. Smith says, well, yes. He said, Scott Bailey, that would be the investigator I told you about that was going to be such a critical player. He's this investigator with the Attorney General's office. He's the one that took down the Canigo report that Steve Smith now says, they got a whole bunch of stuff in there I didn't say, and a lot of stuff in there that's just flat out not accurate. Okay? So, Oglesby says, have you had any contact with the Attorney General's office since I last saw you on May the 1st? And Steve Smith says, well, yes. Scott Bailey telephoned me twice. He also flew out here to Orlando, and he met with me on June the 28th. Of course, there's no, they're probably starting to see why there's no Attorney General representative there present. They know Oglesby's going to be smart enough to ask that question. They don't want to have to answer it, all right? Well, they may not have had to answer it right there, but they darn sure we're going to have to answer about it in court in front of Judge Kelly, and that's going to take us to our next document. That's the good one. I realize it's getting a little long, and I'll try to speed through this, and I highlighted the sections so that you can go in and look at it. This, once Mike McKay and Louis Oglesby found out that, oh, the AG has been over there talking with the witness, all right? And so that's when Mike McKay filed this, and it was filed, looks like August the 22nd of 2014, if I'm reading the date stamp right, and I believe I am. August the 22nd of 2014, and basically they are filing a motion to take Scott Bailey's deposition. They got a few questions they want to ask Mr. Bailey of the Attorney General's office. And let's cover the high points of the memorandum in support of the court granting the taking of Scott Bailey's deposition. You'll see all of this highlighted when you pull up the document. It says, when the deposition reconvened, CNSI learned that Scott Bailey had tampered with Mr. Smith's deposition testimony by calling Smith on the phone twice and flying to Orlando to meet with Smith during the deposition recess. The edited version of Bailey's interview, here's another good one. Oh God, I'll skip right over that. It turns out that Scott Bailey also says, look, oh Lord, you didn't have the right version of the Canigo report, okay? And he gives him the edited version of the Canigo report. He said, what Mr. Oglesby handed to you was the unedited, okay? He said, let me go ahead and give you the edited version. All right, now why in the blue blazes would there be an edited and unedited? This is starting to look really, really horrible for the AG's office. So far, nobody's gotten that evidence. I would give you the edited one, but I don't have it because CNSI's attorneys don't even have it, and they are none too happy to know that they don't. So, brought you up to speed on that. Not only does he go out there and talk with me, he says, look, I need to give you this report. The one that Mr. Oglesby handed to you, we gave the wrong version. Oh, the wrong version. Are we talking the epitome of incompetence, or are we talking corruption, or are we talking a combination of the two? Okay? All right. So, Conigo, Scott Smith, was provided with the edited version of Bailey's interview report. And this edited interview report has never been disclosed or produced to CNI in this case. As a result of Bailey's tampering, and as shown in more detail below, Smith altered his prior testimony. Bailey's tampering with a key witness in this civil matter is outrageous. And I would agree, it's beyond outrageous. Bailey's communication with any other persons, this is what all they want. They want, in addition to the deposition, they want for the AG's office to produce any and all documentation that would pertain to the edited version. Bailey's communications with any other persons or entities about Smith's deposition testimony, including Norm Nichols. Remember, he's the president of Molina that was losing the contract because I said you don't even have the expertise to bid. Now, Mike McKay is very gracious in the following wording that he's using, okay? He's kind of saying, got a feeling what y'all might have done, Attorney General's office, but I'm going to phrase it very politely, very, very nicely. And that's when he says, it'll be on the second page of the report that I provided you to, highlighted at the very bottom. Assuming that an unedited and an edited version of the Conigo report even existed before Smith's deposition, the background makes it clear that the AG knowingly misled this court by submitting the unedited version of the Conigo report in an effort to stop the civil case from moving forward. All right? He says that in effect, they, as I told you earlier, they went through a lot of procedural moves and basically said that Louis Oglesby and Mike McKay would involve themselves in witness tampering. Remember, I told you this was going to get interesting because it's a pot calling the kettle black. And Mr. McKay says the aspersions that the AG cast upon CNSI make the latter's actions all the more outrageous. And I would agree. You know, you're sitting here saying, hey, these two might engage in witness tampering, you know, and that's why we got to file this under seal. You file something under seal that apparently had a whole lot of stuff that Scott Bailey says he didn't say and is inaccurate, you know, but the judge is looking at it through a camera, okay? They don't have a clue. CNSI doesn't know what this Conigo report says, okay? We're having to trust the AG's office, and God, that is a scary, scary, scary proposition, okay? Bailey also revealed that the AG had initiated the investigation after receiving a copy of an email sent by an anonymous informant, which would be him. Now, I talked about Judge Kelly looking at this Conigo report under camera, so we're going to scroll back to July 30th, 2013. That was the same court hearing at which Louis Oglesby wasn't too happy to be told that, hey, we believe you'd be engaged in witness tampering. Judge Kelly had said, I have examined in camera the documentation, that would be the Conigo report, something you've got a link to, brought to me. And he said, and I am going to grant the motion to stay. All right. So he was presented with a report that apparently had a ton of stuff in there somebody put in, assuming Scott Bailey is not perjuring himself and saying, I didn't say that. Okay. Either way, it's bad because Scott Bailey, Steve Smith is their star witness. Remember, it's based upon this guy that they cancel the whole frickin' contract, okay? So you got two choices. Either you got a pathetic witness who can't keep his story straight, or you got the AG tampering with evidence. Well, there's no question there's witness tampering. There appears to be pretty strong evidence of evidence tampering, because why else would there be two versions? Why else did you have? Oh, we gave them the wrong version. Well, why is there two versions? Assuming, as Mike McKay says, there even were before you took this guy's deposition. Polite little hint that we think you might have manufactured the second version after that deposition. Not going to accuse you of it. That's why I say the word assuming there even were two versions. Okay. All right. I love the way Mike McKay worded that. It was perfect. Now, the AG tampers with the deposition testimony of a key witness on May the 1st, 2014. I'm not going to read that because I basically told you what all happened. Now, but I do want to say one thing. And on whatever the page it is, the 5th page, because I've got all this highlighted, I drew a whole lot of blue marks around this because the AG's office, they're now running scared. Why did he go out there? Why did Scott Bailey go out there? He wants to clarify the timeline, okay? Let's make sure you understand when you had this meeting with Norm Nichols. First of all, even having the meeting with Norm Nichols looks bad, okay? Now the AG's office is in damage control, okay? They're recognizing that, oh boy, the House of Cards, you know, this is kind of an analogy to that movie. It is collapsing. It's collapsing. And remember, he pushed all our chips in there on the table, and now we're riding on our chips that could easily cost us $25 million. It's now riding on this guy whose testimony is changing like the wind. We got an attorney general's office out here, you know, saying, well, we got to go out there and meet with that witness. We got to get this mess straight. But anyway, they're saying, look, you didn't meet with, now he ought to know better than they would when he met with Nichols. But they're saying, oh God, we've got to establish some kind of way that you met after, not before, because otherwise it starts to look like the AG's office may have a hand in all this, which is what Louis Oglesby said in what I read to you earlier, that he believes the state is the handmaiden for all of this. Starting to look more and more like Louis Oglesby, who I said who's been around the block a few times, may have been spot on that. All right, so they are paranoid that, look, you have got to get this timeline straight, okay? You did not meet with Mr. Nichols prior to firing off that email. You met with him after, okay? Make sure you got that straight. You met with Norm Nichols after you fired off the email. Okay, how are we going to substantiate that? Oh boy, this is good. AG's office said, here's a credit card receipt from a Mexican restaurant, okay? There's nothing to identify who had the meal. No signature of who paid for this or anything. It literally could have been anyone who ate there. And I'll tell you what, I'll give a little plug here. They probably ate at Ninfa's, a very fine Mexican restaurant. And I will provide you a link for a receipt. I eat at Ninfa's, so that's how I'm familiar with what their receipts look like. There's nothing on it, and I pay with a credit card, okay? You don't even have the last 4 digits. I mean, that receipt could have, if it is from Ninfa's, could have been from anybody, okay? Could have been from anybody. They say it's from Norm Nichols. At least that's what the AG's office says. Now, we got this from Norm Nichols to substantiate when this meeting was. Do you trust Norm Nichols or the AG's office even this much after everything I've just told you? Because I darn sure don't. And I don't think a jury is going to be very impressed with it, okay? All right, that wraps up. Basically, that takes you to where we are today in the CNSL trial, which I would think you would have to admit is pretty well a disaster. In fact, if I were to make the football analogy, you know, every year LSU and every other major college team does it, they schedule these cream puff teams. You couldn't pay me to go out there and watch one of those football. God almighty, I don't know how people do it. Of course, a lot of people don't. I know there's a lot of empty seats in the stands. But when this trial commences, what I'm going to predict that what you're going to see is the equivalent of LSU versus pull some Appalachian State. Sorry to pick on Appalachian State. I just pulled some team off the top of my head in Tiger Stadium. And I'm going to tell you something. Even though I don't go to a game like that in Tiger Stadium, I ain't missing this sucker. Okay, if this thing goes to trial, I ain't missing this sucker. Okay, so that's where we are. Your chips are on the table. And just as a closing commentary, Mr. Steve Smith, who had all this concern for the 1.2 million needy Louisiana citizens that were affected by this contract that he managed to he basically managed to convince Buddy Caldwell to cancel it. Okay? Steve Smith, about 10 days ago, he was hit with a $30 million lawsuit from CNSI. He was served with it. So for his little nice gesture there of caring for the 1.2 million needy Louisiana citizens, he's now on the receiving end of a little bit of documentation that says we're pursuing you for $30 million, big boy. And that's going to be an approximation of the damages. And I wouldn't doubt him for a second. I told you it cost $1 million in Arkansas, flushed right down the toilet, that they lost out on because of stuff that was going on down here. Now, that wraps up the CNSI civil matter. Our next installment is going to be Bruce Greenstein, and that's a criminal trial taking place. I hope you'll stay tuned for that. I think it'll probably be a one-segment deal, but I don't want to downplay it because, boy, that one's interesting too. Okay, because I told you Caldwell did this grand jury. 18 months, okay, 18 months. Now, the feds walked away. Caldwell doesn't have that option because he knows he done got all of our ass sticking out there. All the chips are on the table, so he's got to produce something. Spends 18 months with a grand jury. If I'm on, most people that are on a grand jury, they say, okay, all right, I'm going to get somebody. I didn't spend all this time in here for nothing. Oh, poor old Bruce Greenstein, who voluntarily came in and appeared before the grand jury. Don't let a good deed go unpunished. He gets indicted, okay? And we'll talk about that in installment 4 of Robert Burns sounding off on Attorney General James D. Buddy Caldwell. Thank you so much for tuning in. Like I said, if you didn't catch the first 2 segments, hopefully you're able to get all the way up to speed in watching this segment alone. But I would encourage you, if you haven't go back and watch the first 2 segments. Thank you so much. Look forward to bringing you installment 4, which will be the Bruce Greenstein criminal trial. Thank you once again, Robert Burns.